All right, here we go. Welcome to the podcast. This is Hunter Sheldon, um, area director out of West Virginia, Putnam County, West Virginia. Sorry, Hunter, how's it going?
It's going great. Snowing a bunch here. Gonna take my boys out to play in the snow after this.
How many inches do you have?
We probably have like 5 or 6, and it's supposed to snow even more here in a couple hours.
Dang,
So,
that is crazy. Yeah, we probably have 6 or 7 too. So, and it's still going at it. I'm just trying to look outside. It's still going crazy. But real quick, so this is a flowing conversation. Me and Hunter are best friends, so we know each other. It's a little awkward just talking to you over this podcast form, but really, what I wanted it to be is just Hunter's involved in a lot of different things, so maybe this will give him a platform just to tell a little bit about what he does as a career, maybe a little bit with what he does extracurricularly. But for everybody, we're going to start off the podcast. I want to give an intro to Hunter, who he is. So he is a husband. He's a father of two. No more kids, right?
no more kids.
No more kids. Okay.
No more.
He is a Christian. He is a head track and cross country coach, right? Both head of both.
Correct. Cross country girls, track boys.
That's kind of new too, right?
Yeah, just brand new on the track.
Brand new. That's at Winfield High School. I don't know if you still do this, but you used to be a photographer. Still probably do it occasionally.
Yeah, very occasionally, not anything serious.
Okay. Um, you were my best man. I was your best man. So we were the best men. This is probably my favorite one on the list that I found. Ex Pizza Man.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then area director of Young Life in Putnam County, I put. So for the people who are listening, can you just describe maybe what Young Life is? Because I'm sure the more and more I do this podcast, I'm sure we'll have more people from Young Life. So maybe just kind of from the get go, can you kind of describe and a little bit just how what Young Life is and what it does and kind of all the facets that it is?
Yeah, what I like to say is that Young Life is trying to reach kids that would never step foot in a church. Back in the day, probably when you and I were in high school, even middle school, kids were just flocking to youth groups,
Mm,
especially here in Putnam County. I don't know about you in Greenbrier and Greenbrier West. I don't know what was going on down there and right
hey
now,
man.
but um, but it's just kids aren't going to youth groups as much as they used to.
Mm,
So we at Young Life want to reach those furthest out kids that would never step foot in a church, maybe have church hurt, maybe have just
mm.
no idea what the Bible is or what Jesus is, and maybe just has a negative connotation to everything. And we want to come alongside them where they are, meet them where they are at school, at sporting events, maybe as a track or cross country coach,
Yeah.
um, and just show them who the Bible says Jesus is and let them come to their own conclusions. And hopefully they accept Christ, and then we can plug them into a local church that fits best for them.
Okay, so you're not necessarily going after the church kids. I know that's kind of been a division maybe with Young Life or maybe a hard struggle where it's like that's supposed to be the end goal, right? You kind of usher them into the church and just kind of this is where you're supposed to be. So you're kind of taking them from to start to finish.
Yeah, I what we're doing here in Putnam County is we have a group of youth pastors that kind of do a rotation at our Young Life events, at our game nights or whatever, trivia nights, whatever that may be, so that kids can start growing relationships with them. So when they do accept Christ, hopefully they have a place where they say, "Oh, I really connected with Matt at River Ridge," or "I really connected with Matt Jacobs at whatever church he's at." I just said his name and I have no clue, but maybe just be able to connect with a certain person, and then they can really learn how to have a relationship with Christ at a church. We are not the church in any means, and we never want to
Yeah.
be, but we just saw a need and wanted to fill that void.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can get to it at some point. I kind of want to start at the beginning of your life and just kind of see what made Hunter into who he is, and so maybe some of other leaders or kids that you're around, or just maybe people that you're friends with can kind of see who made you into what. But I know for me personally, and I'm sure you can say the same thing about you, like Young Life really came in at a perfect time in my life, and it kind of helped me navigate my faith in a way that I have never really experienced growing up. So we can get into that more with you,
Yeah.
but I kind of want to start at the beginning. So you grew up in Hurricane Taze Valley area.
Yeah, well, at first, me and my family, not in the wealthiest of places, lived in St. Albans, West Virginia, in a double wide.
Yeah.
I actually
Okay.
shared a room with my two older brothers. My sister had her own room, but we lived in a double wide, the six of us, my two parents and three siblings. So, and
Wow.
then once my dad became a realtor and sold this very big piece of property, which was basically a condo or a motel kind of place, really kind of put him on the map. And then we moved into Hurricane.
Wow. Okay. So growing up, similar to me, like, there's not a lot of money to go around, in the early stages. Eventually, when my parents and your parents, it sounds like, kind of get further in their careers, then it feels like you can get a little more comfortable. But so starting out, it was a little rougher financially, probably. Was both of your parents, was it like a dual income household, or was it just your dad? Or do you
Um,
remember?
like when we were in St. Albans, I was trying to remember a lot about that here recently, and it's like my dad was always being a realtor, just trying to make it in that. But my mom, at first, before I was in school or anything, she was a stay-at-home mom and was doing school with my three older siblings.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
She was doing, like, she was homeschooling them.
yeah,
That's crazy. I did not know that. Wow.
yeah.
So what, like, wait, did you say you were at school while she was homeschooling these kids?
No, I wasn't young. I wasn't old
Oh,
enough
okay.
to. Yeah,
Bro, I cannot imagine. I mean, you have two kids, I have one kid. I cannot imagine trying to homeschool three other kids and then also have a baby at home. Like, that just sounds crazy.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure that Preston was homeschooled. He was only a year older than me, but I do remember my two older ones definitely.
Okay, nice. Well, so you talked about your siblings there, and I kind of wanted to talk about that. So you have Preston, which is your older brother, and then you have Dallas,
So it goes, if
or
we
how
start from
does
the
it? What's the
top,
ranking?
start
Yeah.
from the top, Dallas is the oldest, and then Kaylee, my sister, and then Preston, and then me.
Okay, so you're the baby of the bunch. Okay,
Yep.
how how did that affect you growing up? Like, was it a good experience? Like, ultimately having older siblings and kind of, I'm sure they gave you crap at times and all the sibling stuff, but like,
Yeah.
was it ultimately a good thing that they could be like, hey, we've already walked through these steps, like, here's how, we can show you how to do it? Like, or was it kind of rough at the start, or how was that?
I like to tell people, or just, and when anyone asks me this question, that we lived, I felt, two different lives. Me and Preston lived a life with my parents, and Kaylee and Dallas lived a life with my parents, right? So Preston and me were born in 94 and 95. Dallas and Kaylee were born in 89 and 91. Not a huge difference, but there was a little bit of a difference. And so I felt like they parented them a lot different than me and Preston. And so I didn't really get to know my siblings until I got to the age of out of high school and everything.
Gotcha. Nice. Okay. So it was almost more like you and Preston kind of were together growing up. And so he probably had, or probably you guys both probably had impressions on each other growing up. Because what is he, a year older than you?
Yeah, he's like a year and a half, but he was only a year in school. But he was the typical older brother, get under your skin,
Classic. Yeah,
just, I mean, could do anything to push the right button for me to then get mad at him and get in trouble. And
for sure.
we didn't like each other growing up, I don't think. And maybe that was just on my end. But but now I would say he is up there as one of the people that I talk to the most, other than you. I talk to you more than I talk to anyone else, other than my wife, obviously. I put that to the side.
Yeah.
Outside of my wife, I talk to you the most, and then probably him, even though he lives in Zambia. So
Wow. Yeah, I mean, for everybody listening, there could be one person listening. There could be 100,000 people listening. Yeah, Hunter's brother is a missionary in Zambia. You said
Zambia is his like home base. They actually just built a house there, but
that's
he
crazy.
he travels a lot. So
Gosh. Well, okay, yeah. So we kind of talked about the sibling part of this. So you grow up, in St. Albans area, and eventually you, I guess, move kind of into the Winfield area, and you go to Winfield Middle School, right?
yep.
Okay. So at what point, because I know sports in both of our lives played a huge factor, did you start into sports super young? Did you kind of right when you got into middle school? Is that kind of like when you started stuff? Or I know also Winfield has a really good just program, so they probably start programs pretty young there, just to kind of get people rolling. Just tell me like when that all started for you.
Yeah, soccer wise started when I was 3. I started playing soccer at 3 and then got on a travel team with mostly kids in this area. So every kid on my travel team either went to Hurricane or Winfield High School or Winfield Middle School and Hurricane Middle School. So uh, with soccer, that started really young and I played till my high school years. But track and cross country just kind of got thrown into it my 6th grade year.
Nice. Do you what is like thinking back on like your middle school years, like middle school Hunter running around Winfield? Like what are the what are like the biggest memories slash like who are some of like your friends you were running around with?
Yeah, I would say friends running around with was definitely Bryce Boggs and Nathan Mashel. Bryce was our goalie, and I actually all of our travel games I actually went with him because Preston was playing travel and we were on different
Okay.
teams. So my parents always kind of floated towards him and went with him because he was really good at soccer.
Hmm.
Um, Ended up winning forward of the year in West Virginia, so like
Wow.
really good at soccer. And then I always just kind of went with Bryce and his grandparents, and we stayed in hotels with him. And they would end up showing up to my games, but I would always go with them. Um, and then Nathan Mashel, we grew up in the same neighborhood, and he's probably one of the only ones from high school or just from school in general that I still talk to today. And you
Hmm.
remember Nathan? He was in my wedding, um, but just he's an absolute whirlwind of a guy, and I never know what he's doing at this point. But core memories, I would say it would have to be track. I was thinking back to this as like I won what started my love for running was the 2 mile my 6th grade year. I won the Putnam County Championship as a
Dang, I
sixth
did not
grader.
know that. Wow.
Yeah, as the 2 mile, and then I was like, well, I love this feeling.
Yeah.
I got to keep chasing this. And
Right.
then my 7th grade year, I come back and I then win the 4x8 and the 2 mile. So
Wow.
I'm like, all right, I'm loving this. I'm like number one in Putnam County. And then my 8th grade year, this like I'm short, right? Like I was a short kid growing up, right? I have celiac disease, it stunts your growth, whatever. That's beside the point. But I mean, like I was under 5 foot, probably
Wow.
under 80 pounds, right? Like probably my 9th grade year is when I became like 5 foot and 90 some pounds.
Wow.
So I remember this kid was shorter than me and he came up to me and he was like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Hunter." And he was like, "What are you running?" And this is in the county championship. It was like the 2 mile. He goes, "I'm a kick your," and he said that to me, right? Like he just says it. And I'm just like, "What?" And he goes up to every single kid in the 2 mile and just tells them that. He introduces himself and just says he's going to do that. And you know what? The kid did it. He kicked my
Oh,
butt. He I got second. He won it. Like he called his stuff. I don't even remember his
oh.
name. I need to look it up.
Wait,
But
what school did he go to?
I I'm gonna guess Hurricane. I want to believe he was wearing red. It could have been Polka.
But like,
Um,
did you like moving forward, like in the next years, like was he still around?
Never saw that kid again in my
Okay.
life. Never saw him again.
He just
Kid
came to
called.
one race and he's like, I'm gonna kick all of y'all's butts, and then he did,
Yeah,
and then he's out.
yeah, and he did it, and I've never seen or heard of that kid again. And I still
That's
remember this to my
legendary.
day. and it makes me laugh every single time because my father saw it. My father saw was in the stands and he saw, hey, this kid's coming up to you and he's pointing in your face. What is he saying? And I was like, he said he was gonna kick my butt. He was
That's
like,
awesome.
he did it, and I was like, yeah, he did. He for sure did it.
Golly, that is funny.
Yeah, man,
Um,
I gotta look up what his name is.
yeah, if you find him, that you gotta let me know because that is legendary.
Yeah, shout out
Um,
him. Called his shot.
well, okay, so moving forward from middle school, this is the part of Hunter's life that really interests me. It is
Yeah,
the high school years because I think these are the years. I'm sure the college years too play a huge factor, but it high school years really set you up with what direction you're probably heading in. So talk me through all that. Sports. Even you know God and young life. Like where does that come into a picture for you, and how it came into a picture for you, and just kind of tell me like how your high school years were.
yeah. Can I take you back?
Let's go
My
back.
par Yeah, my parents super involved in this church called Maranatha in St. Albans. And when I say super involved, we were there 6 out of the 7 days a week.
Doing what? That's crazy.
Right, yeah, right. Like, and that was my elementary to middle school years was like
Okay.
that's what they were doing. They were
Yeah.
cleaning. Like I think they
Mm.
were getting a side job in cleaning the church, making some extra money, right? And
That
then they
makes
were.
sense.
My mom loves to cook, loves to, you know that.
Oh,
Um,
those cinnamon rolls are
the cinnamon
to
rolls,
die for.
right? And she worked in the cafe. They had a running
Oh,
cafe where you could come in after the church service and order food, and they would bring in. Her and her friend Judy were known for making hot fudge sundaes, right? Like
ooh.
those were the things to get every single time. But we were there all the time. So coming into my freshman year, I actually stepped away from everything from the church.
Hmm.
I was at the point where I didn't want anything to do with it because I felt so burnt out from it
Oh yeah.
that I was actually like, I remember my mom like dragging me out of bed, like, you have to go to church. Like, I remember locking my door and shoving stuff in front of it so she couldn't wake me up on Sunday to go to church,
Hmm.
that I was just kind of done with it.
Yeah.
And so I met some friends, probably got into some, not probably, did get into some pretty bad stuff my freshman year. And met up with an old family friend whose parents were kind of doing the same thing at Maranatha. His name was Austin. Uh, and Austin and I kind of were going down the same path of not wanting to go to church, and we started hanging out. He was older than me; he was a senior in high school.
Hmm.
Um, but we started hanging out, and then he started actually getting back into church at a completely separate church from that. And he kept trying to get me to come back, and I wouldn't. And then my freshman year, right around Halloween, Austin actually died.
Oh wow.
And at first, it was that he actually killed himself, but that's not what happened. He was playing a prank, and it looked like he did, but didn't. Some things happened with his medicine he was taking, and unfortunately passed away. And I remember sitting there and being like, "Bro was going to church, and this happened. Why would I
Yeah.
then go to church and let this happen to me?"
Sure.
So I then stepped further away and was like, no way. But I remember at his funeral, the pastor was speaking, and it just hit me in all the feels of like, maybe I am going down this wrong path. And I remember coming to my brother Preston at this point, even though we still didn't love each other the way we should have, of being like, I think I'm in a bad place and I think I need to go to church, but Maranatha's youth group was huge, like running 100 plus kids on a Sunday.
Wow.
And so you were just put in this kind of box. And this wasn't their fault. They were
Sure.
just trying
Yeah.
to deal with a bunch of kids.
Hmm.
But you're put in a box with kids you went to school with. And I'm like, I don't want to be hanging out with kids I went to school with. That's not the point
Right.
of me coming here.
Yeah.
So Preston and I decided we were going to go look for a church. Uh,
Wow. And you're what?
and
How old at this point?
freshman
Yeah. I
in
mean,
high school.
that's crazy. Like a sophomore and freshman, out doing this.
Yeah, without our parents, because our parents were so dedicated to that church. My dad was becoming a deacon and like everything like that. So we told him how we felt, and they were okay with it as long as we were going to church. So we went around to a couple churches and landed in this church called River Ridge that was happening inside of an elementary school on a Sunday.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so we literally before we could even sit down, Preston was with his old girlfriend. I remember this. It was me, Preston, and his old girlfriend. And before we could even sit down, this like redheaded, red beard dude just comes like sprinting almost over to us, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Zach Brady, and I'm the youth pastor here, and we want to invite you to this person's house for our youth group." And I'm like, "Get out of my face!" Right? Like get out of here.
Classic youth pastor.
Oh yeah, right. And I told him no. I was like, I'm not coming to that. I think Preston and his girlfriend would end up going, and I was like, no. And then he just wore me down every single Sunday. He'd see me, he'd come and introduce himself again, like I didn't know who he was. He's the only
Right.
redheaded dude in there, and he kept inviting me. Finally, I'd go and I'd get to know Zach a little bit more, and uh, he'd find out my story and everything, and he decided that youth group probably wasn't the best fit for me at that time, which is
Wow.
pretty ahead of its time
Yeah.
because the like the stereotypical youth pastor, right, is gonna no, stay with us. You got to stay here, and
Yep.
you can, right. And he was like, maybe come check out this thing we just started at Winfield and Hurricane called Young Life, and he was leading at Young Life, and I went, and it just felt right from the beginning. Preston came with me, and Preston hated it because you sing songs and all that.
Yeah.
And uh, I think he only came sometimes because Zach was there. But that's really where I felt like I met Christ for the first time.
Wow.
And just all the people felt genuine, and it felt just everything felt right. And so from then on out, my like sophomore year, let me go back actually. The first time I went to Young Life, it
Oh gosh.
absolutely sucked. Like it was my sophomore year. It was coming to the end of the year, and it was in this rich girl's house. Honestly, I was going there the first time because she was there, um, and
Classic story.
yeah, of course,
Some girl
right.
involved.
And when I say rich, like this house was one sold for $1.5 million,
Okay, so
like
she's rich,
the
rich.
rich, right? And we go there, and it's like seven people in a room,
Oh
like
no.
three of them are adults, and it's Rich Holtzapfel, and you know Rich, but if you don't know Rich, ginormous dude, like just
Yep.
huge, kind of looks like John Cena, and is up there with a karaoke machine singing "Bye Bye Bye" with like five kids in a room, and I'm like, this sucks. I told Zach, I'm like, this is terrible, and Zach's like, you'll come back, and I'm like, no way, and I didn't for the rest of the year. Didn't come back,
Wow.
but my junior year I came back, and that's when it really just more kids started showing up, and it just felt more genuine, and I saw what Zach saw in it. And from then on out, I really took my faith serious, and then got really plugged into the youth group with him. Um, and so that is my little faith journey with God. But let's go to the other side, right? Sports.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Sports is who I am, I think, in a lot of ways. I was still running the 2 mile my freshman year, and was the number one runner in the state as a ninth grader. Like
Wow.
of all ninth graders, still number one in the 2 mile. But
Wow.
there was a guy right there with me, right? And like
It was that guy. It was that one guy.
it wasn't him, but we just kept beating each other. And I remember sophomore year, this story, you've heard this story before. I know you have. But before we knew I had celiac disease, we didn't know anything. I just started getting really bad stomach pains, and then didn't poop for a month,
Oh gosh.
right? Not for a single month, like for the entire month, I just couldn't poop.
Like that's not a
Right?
joke.
That
Like,
is the absolute truth that I am telling you. For a month straight, I couldn't poop. I was going to doctors, and no doctor could tell me any. They were just like, your bowels are locked up, and I'm like, well, let's unlock those things, right?
oh my gosh.
And
I have so
and
many questions. So did you just not eat for a whole like?
no, I
Where's that?
still ate.
Oh my
My
gosh.
stomach just hurt all the time, but I was still hungry. I'm, I'm a sophomore in high school. I
Oh
finally got
my
my growth
gosh.
spurt. Like I'm gaining muscle and just wanting to eat and run, and I'm playing soccer. So I'm just this is in the spring, and like every single doctor's like, your bowels are just locked up, and they tried giving me something. I'm like, let's unlock those things, baby, come on. Like, and no one could. And so our
Huh.
first race of the year was coming up,
Oh no.
and the last doctor I saw was like, do not run. Like, that is a terrible idea. And he ended up telling me, he's like, I'm giving you these laxatives. You're going to take these laxatives. If nothing happens in 2 days, we're giving you an enema. And so I was like, well, I don't know what an enema is, but I don't want it. Right. And then I looked it up, and I really didn't want it.
Right.
And so I that that kid that was right there with me was going to be at that first race of the 2 mile in Point Pleasant, where the Mothman is. And I'm like, I'm going.
Oh
And I
yeah.
and I and I tell my coaches, like, I'm running, and my coach is like, you're gonna poop yourself. And I'm like, that'll be fine. And I'm running the 2 mile. It's the first race of the day. They're running a 2 session meet, so the 2 mile is like the first race basically. And
Oh gosh.
first 3 laps, I'm feeling fine. I hit that fourth lap, man, my stomach started hurting. And I cannot tell you that I literally hit the line for the first mile, and it just all came out. Like, I just
The
started pooping myself.
the dam
Like,
broke.
yeah, I mean, it broke, and it was flooding. And if you knew my coach, the head coach of all of it, and he just retired this year. The track is named after him. He is get in your face, tell you about yourself, and you do not quit a race unless you're injured, and like, you better be dying if you quit a race. So I heard
Yeah.
that in the back of my mind, and I'm like, I'm running. So I ran the next 4 laps just pooping myself.
Oh.
And and at the end of the day, I ran my worst ever 2 mile time of my high school career. It was I just looked it up because I was telling a kid this story. And I ran an 11:15.
Okay.
Not terrible, but not great in any means. But I didn't get last in that race. And that is the funniest part of that race to me the entire time, because it's pretty bad for those kids that lost
Yeah.
to someone who pooped
Pooping
themselves.
their
Yeah, and I finished the race, right? And Point Pleasant was redoing all their stuff. So on the complete other side was porta potties. So I finished the race, and I just keep running.
just run straight to the porta
And
potties.
they're like, "Hey, you're done." And I'm like, "I'm not finished.
I'm
I
not
gotta
done
get
yet.
like." And so I get there, and I literally anything from my waist down, I just threw in the porta potty. I was like, no one wants this. Like, my track spikes had a minute, like,
Oh,
had, yeah, like everything. Like, I mean, it's running, and like, so I just threw everything away.
that is
And then
disgusting.
yeah, and then I weighed myself, and this is not an exaggeration. I weighed myself after I got home. I had lost 13.2 pounds that day.
Oh my gosh. That
Yeah.
you're a different person at that point.
Yeah, man, it was incredible. That story. It was embarrassing looking back, or when I was there. Obviously, I'm a sophomore in high school. Did it in front of a bunch of people. All these right girls and all these guys are here, and it's embarrassing. But looking back at it, it's an hilarious story.
Oh, that's a legendary story. I mean, it takes me back. Like I like to get into the story. I'm like, did any of the other runners find out, or like going around the track? Are they like smelling something? Are they like realizing what's happening? Like,
Yeah, luckily my compression shorts underneath my shorts kind of
oh,
held everything, but like it dribbled down a little bit. So
bro,
like,
that is insane. Also a
yeah, dude.
legendary story.
Yeah, so I would continue to do track and I actually only ran 2 cross country meets my whole high school career because I chose soccer over cross country. And looking back at it, I was a lot better at running than I was soccer, and probably should have given it up. But would go on to run in the state track meet in 4 different events. I would run the 4x8, and we didn't do anything. We were there. We
Yeah.
finished like, I think we finished ninth out of 16 teams, right? So we had the
Okay.
ninth best team in AAA. And then I would run the 2 mile my sophomore year and not do anything, get like 10th, 11th place, whatever. Uh, and then I would run the mile, which is what I started becoming the best at.
Okay.
I'd run the mile my junior year, and I'd run a 4:32 in the mile. It's good,
Yeah.
not great, not
Okay.
great. I got last place by 100 meters, right? Like I got destroyed in that race.
Yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely cooked. I PR'd by 10 seconds. 4:32 is not bad, but I lost to 15th place by 100 meters.
So you're like waving at everybody coming in.
Oh, I got the
Like,
little pity clap at
yeah,
that
that's
point.
annoying.
Oh, at that point, I said I'm done running. I didn't like that feeling. I
Yeah.
didn't like the way I PR'd by 10 seconds. I should be happy about myself and just said, I don't like this feeling. I'm done
Yeah.
running. And I would eventually come back and run the 4x8 my senior year in the state meet and the 300-meter hurdles of anything else. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's my running career. I'd play other sports, uh, basketball,
Yeah.
but I'm terrible at baseball, just so bad at baseball.
Yeah.
But
who
I mean,
who's good at baseball?
I,
So so it seems like, Zach Brady kind of with, ministry kind of ushered you into to young life, and maybe Rich Holtzaffel, which for anybody who's listening, if you haven't met Rich, I would highly encourage you go out and meet Rich. He is a legend. He's great. He still leads, right?
still a leader for me, right? He's one of
Yeah.
my volunteer leaders, which is really cool. Holtapple Law, you need a lawyer. Hashtag not a sponsor, right? But
I
could
was
be.
driving.
I don't know.
I When we were driving back home to West Virginia, um, I we came through Winfield to stop and get some gas. I saw his Tesla truck or
Oh
his
yeah,
Cybertruck.
he's got the
So
Cybertruck, man. He
yeah,
takes kids on rides at Young Life all the time.
yeah. So if you're a kid and you're listening to this, come take a ride with Rich.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
so that kind of ushered you in, and I know you had some hard sports coaches there as well. So they've kind of helped mold Hunter into who he was in his high school years. So once you graduate and get out of high school, I know at some point you have been dating Bailey for forever, and at some point you guys get married. What kind of, because eventually you go into, like I said, you're a area director for Young Life. um, what kind of led you into that position? Did you always want to work for Young Life? Did you ever desire to do something else? Like, did you pursue other things? Like, what kind of ultimately led you into that position?
Yeah, so let's go back to high school. Back with Zach Brady, right?
Okay.
He took us. We went on this just like youth retreat. And honestly, I can't remember where it was, but this is the like making of Hunter, as you
Okay.
will say,
Yeah.
right? In Young Life, they do the 20 minutes, right? You get to spend 20 minutes alone out in the wilderness at night. You get to look up, see the stars, and you get to spend 20 minutes with God, right?
Yep.
Um, that's the opportunity you get. And this time, man, I mean, that's such a blessing, right? Get away from
Yeah.
your phone, get away from everything.
100%.
You're just out in the wilderness
Yep.
for 20 minutes alone. And um, Zach, he loved that about Young Life. So every time we would do a retreat, he's like, "We're gonna do this. I'm gonna make you guys go out and in at night on the campground, go by yourself and just spend." And honestly, he would just say, "Spend as much time as you need." He's like, "Just come back when you're ready."
Hmm.
And I remember I'd be walking around this place, and I need to remember where this place is, but we were walking around and finally finding a place. And I hear the words. I audibly hear the words that just says teacher. That I'm a senior in high school. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, um, and I just hear teacher, and I'm like, all right, this is what I'm meant to do. No other explanation, so I take it as literal as possible, and I'm like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
I'm going to be a teacher.
Sure.
So I get a scholarship to Rio Grande to run track, and I show up and absolutely hate it. I don't even start the school year. Hate it.
Wow.
I'm just kind of done running. I guess I'm done letting other people tell me how to run.
Yeah. Yeah.
They wanted me to do steeplechase because I ran the 300-meter hurdles and I did that. I wasn't about it. I loved running for running, and I was just kind of tired of the competition of it all.
Yeah.
So I moved back home and I went to West Virginia State University because they had the best education program in the state, and I commuted there. and I worked at your favorite place, Husson's Pizza, right?
Shout out,
They could be a sponsor too. Come on, right?
honestly.
But I took it as literal as possible. So I started as a volunteer in Young Life right back home, um, and would start volunteering at Winfield High School because I was like, I know everyone there. I could just go there. Uh, and I was like, I'll just become a teacher and help out with Young Life on the side. And as life were to go on, I got an opportunity to be an intern at River Ridge, their middle school intern. So for a year, I did that. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, I
Yeah,
love this. And I got that little taste of what it's like to maybe teacher didn't mean teacher.
yeah,
And so I was like, maybe I'll just do this full time. And so as I was being an intern, I dropped out of college. I dropped out of college and it was just
yeah.
like, I'm just gonna do this.
Hmm.
Um, and Um, Things really just didn't go great with River Ridge. It just really wasn't the best fit. And so that's when you kind of moved into town. Uh,
Yeah,
that's kind of when that ended. And so I just started working at Husson's and was helping my mom out clean the Marshall football stadium because she was
yeah.
doing that. Um, and leading Young Life with you is when we started going to Hurricane and just hanging out with the boys.
That was a
And
great time.
yeah. And so I just kept doing it and I'm like, I think this is right, but I just don't know what's the right fit for me because I feel like I'm called to teach about the gospel, but I just
Hmm.
don't know, is the church really the right fit? Is Young Life really the right fit? Um and what's funny is the day I got asked to be an intern at River Ridge is the same day I got asked to be the a volunteer area director in Putnam County for Young Life.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't going to pay me and River Ridge was going to pay me and I was like,
Oh,
well, I want to get paid, right? um and so I did that. And I was young. I was 19, 20 years old when I started that.
yeah,
Super immature in my faith and what it's like to run something. And like I said, it just didn't work out. And I sat there at Husson's delivering pizzas and not really knowing what I was going to do with my life.
yeah,
Was dating Bailey, as you said. We met in high school, started dating my senior year, but then I was really in this whirlwind of not knowing what was going on in my life and would end up breaking up with her when you started coming around because I just didn't know what was next steps for me. And so
yeah,
when I didn't know, I kind of just pushed everything away.
yeah.
And so I pushed her away as well
Hmm.
for a year, right? And the dumbest mistake of my life was that, right? I like to say that. And so we'd eventually get back together and she would help me kind of find out what's next steps. And then I would actually go back to Maranatha, right? Of all things, it all kind of all
Yeah.
comes full circle and is like,
Hmm.
they need a middle school youth pastor. And
Hmm.
so they hired me on as a part time. Um, they kind of hired me and this other guy as part time. They wanted to use us, and it's like you don't right hire two part time presidents, right? Like you get
Right.
one
Yeah.
full guy, you get one full time person in there, and me and this guy just didn't click. It was really funny. He sat down. He's like, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I'm like, "This." And
I'm
he's like,
doing
"Oh,
it.
he's like, I love my other job, right? Like, I love being a bank. Like, he was a banker, and he loved it, and that's great." And I'm like, "No, I want to do this."
Yeah.
Um, and after a year, Bailey and I would get engaged, and I would ask her to marry me, whatever. And then I would go to Maranatha and being like, "Hey, I can't get married on a part-time salary. Like that's
Yeah.
just not. I don't want money to be this issue and everything." And they would say, "No, we're not going to hire you full time. We'll keep you part time." And I was
Yeah.
like, "That's just not going to work for me."
Yep.
So then I'm in this whirlwind again of like maybe this isn't right. Maybe me working for a church, working with the gospel, this just isn't the right fit. So I would start delivering medical equipment because
Yeah.
I was good at delivering pizzas. Let's deliver medical equipment.
Yeah.
How hard can it be, right?
Right.
It probably the most disgusting job of my life was doing that.
Hmm.
Of I remember delivering. a medical bed and putting it together in a house with cockroaches all over the wall and human feces. Like,
Oh,
yeah, man, just like, and it was a hard year. And it was a
mm,
year, but I knew that it was important to make money to support my wife and just to live
yeah,
life. And I would still volunteer with Young Life as that time would go on, but and trying just to do anything I could just to do God's word. But it was a hard year of delivering medical equipment. And then
yeah,
I would end up calling Scott Berg up, who is the guy over all of Young Life in the Mountain State region, the regional director.
mm,
And I'd call him and I'm like, I want to go on Young Life staff. I think this might be the right fit for me. And he's like, well, we're actually doing interviews in a couple weeks. He's like, we're doing interviews, but we have no job openings. And I was like, okay. He's like, but come interview. He's like, maybe we'll find a right fit for you, but if not, there's other states hiring. Um, Maybe we can send you to Ohio or Pennsylvania. He's like, so let's do the interview and see what it's all about. And I do the interview, and I wouldn't hear anything back for like a month. And I was like, oh,
wow,
maybe this just wasn't the right fit. So I was
yeah,
still delivering medical equipment. And then he calls me up and is like, hey, here's your options. We have some places in Ohio, some places in Pennsylvania, or you can move to Parkersburg, West Virginia with a guy named Kirk Wilson, who's been doing staff there, but he's been doing it alone. No volunteer leaders,
mm,
nothing. And we just kind of want to double down on this area and see if it can work. Um, he's like, but you'd have to do a church partnership. And
okay,
I'm like, what does that mean? And so he sends me to this church, and this church gets to decide three options. Do I do full time church ministry with them and then kind of do Young Life as a volunteer, but technically on staff with them, but full time with the church? Or I can split my time, part time with the church, part time with Young Life, or I can do full time with the church and just run as their main guy as a volunteer. And the church chose to make me full time Young Life and just kind of volunteer.
mm,
And that was their choice. And it was kind of a 3 year deal, and they hated it.
mm,
And it just kept coming back to this like, man, this church thing really isn't working for me.
yeah, mm,
Um, but Young Life there was great. Me and Kirk worked really well together. And he got me into coaching, actually my first ever coaching job of coaching cross country as a volunteer. And then I
mm,
became an assistant track coach coaching the mid distance and distance at Parkersburg South High School.
nice,
So that took me there. And then after 3 years, I called Scott Berg up and was like, there's an open in my hometown. And I just got a heart for my hometown to send me
mm,
there. And that's what he did.
wow. So, you know, Hunter, you're 29, right?
29.
29. I'm 30. We're both young, but it because I felt the similar feelings that you felt, where it's kind of like, what am I doing? Like I feel like I'm kind of just walking in random directions. Like I don't really know what to do with my life. Where's it all going? Like, and now that I'm on the other side of that, if there's ever somebody listening to this who is like, I'm in that right now, like, I don't know if you would have anything to say about like just that process. But for me, it's like, looking back at it now, God was directing that the whole time, going through each job that you hated, each situation, everywhere you lived, every church you worked at. It's like, they're all kind of just leading you up to where you are. So for you, now you've back in your hometown, you're working for Young Life. Do you kind of feel that kind of directionless? Do you feel like it's gone? Like, do you feel like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be? Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, man, 100%. There's not been a day since moving back here that I haven't woken up and been like, what am I doing? Like, is
Yeah.
this right? Like, it has just been affirmation after affirmation and reaffirming just everything of saying, yeah, this is where you're supposed to be.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, so the name of this podcast is The Rugged Horizon, and it's a pretty funky name, but I love hearing just people's stories. I was talking to my wife the other day, and it excites me just hearing how people sports teams, like championship teams, coaches, like anything, how they started in their life and how they turn out, like where they are and what are the steps they took to get to those positions or spots or just where they are. So Hunter, I thank you for kind of sharing your life story. Two follow-up questions, and then I'll let you go. I know you have a couple kids and they're probably running around right now, but so the first one would be, for maybe somebody who is younger or maybe in a similar spot as you just came out of, or what are some like recommendations that you would give to that person? Books to read, podcasts to listen to, people to meet with, people to follow, and whatever. Just, do you have anything that kind of pops out in your head for people like that?
Yeah, I want to first say is that something that I've written down here recently and noticed is do the things that you love, not the things that you're good at, right? Like I was good at playing soccer. I was good at running a church youth group. But it wasn't something that I loved and it wasn't something that brought enjoyment. Just because I was good at it didn't really fulfill me.
Yeah.
Um, the things I did that I loved is what fulfilled me. And so that is something, I don't know if that's your question, but that is something that has been weighing on me here recently is that I need to focus on things that I love, not that I'm just good at it, just to do it because I'm good at it.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I mean, you heard people, you do what you love and you'll never work a day. Like that's total cliche, but like that is so good. Like, especially now you're getting into your older age, you just don't want to keep following the status quo of just doing crap just to do crap. Is like, no, I love doing this, so I want to do it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let me tell you a quick story. I don't know
Yeah.
if we have the time or not, but a quick story. There's this girl, I'm not going to say her full name, but her name is Ava. And they could look them up if they did. Amazing runner, right? Like her freshman, sophomore year won the state championship in cross
Wow.
country, right? Like really good runner. Um, and her sophomore year is when I became the head coach of the cross country team and she quit. And we
Wow.
had these conversations like, is it me? Are you quitting because I'm the new coach? Or like,
Yeah.
and she quit because she just kind of stopped liking it.
Huh.
And everyone's like, no, you're so good. Like you can go to college, you can do all these things. You're just so good at it. And I see her all the time now, just in passing. She works at a restaurant that we go to sometimes, and it's like she's so happy, right?
Huh.
She loves her decision. She just is happy that she's just living life and doesn't have the pressure of being the best at the top and running. And she's living a really good life. And so, if that's anything, is like that can just reaffirm that if that is what you're feeling of like you're good at it but you don't love it, then why
Yeah.
do it?
Gosh. Yeah, I love that. That's honestly challenging for me to just remember as I kind of move forward in life. Do the things that I love, not the things that I'm good at. Last question. This is something that's maybe kind of fun, interesting for this show, for what it is, kind of talking through life. Who would you recommend be on this show? Someone who may have an interesting life, maybe someone who doesn't. Just who kind of comes to your thoughts whenever I ask that question?
Yeah, I mean, so first guy that came to my mind is like Zach Brady, right? If you
Okay.
could somehow, right? Dude lives in Malawi, right? In Africa, in
Really?
Malawi, the country Malawi. He's doing full-time Young Life ministry there. He's always wanted to be a
Wow.
missionary. His whole saying was live in a hut, poop in a hole, and love people. Like, and that's what he wanted to do, right?
And he's doing that.
And he's doing that, right? But no, and that's a hard get because
Yeah.
he's there. But I honestly think probably your best bet and would be just an amazing person to talk to would be Rich Holtzapfel.
Okay.
I
I'm
mean,
writing his name down.
man, could you imagine what that would look like? Because that guy is just all over the place and he is ginormous, but he's a child.
Yep.
But he's lived an amazing life and would have a lot of good information.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've already spoken highly of him. I love Rich. Hopefully he's listening to this. And Rich, your name is being talked about a lot if you're listening to this. So it's kind of fun that it's all coming full circle. Okay. Well, Hunter, thank you for being on the rugged horizon. Um, and I hope you have a good day, man.
Yeah, you too.
Alrighty.